To save us some time doing more of what we've already shown you, we have a few prefabs to flesh out the victory screen, lose screen, and main menu. Let's start by bringing in the game over screen from prefabs, UI, UI pages, and putting it underneath our canvas. If you turn it on, you can see it's already set up with the main menu button. And if we take a look into the main menu button itself, we can see that the button is set up with this level load button script that the button uses to load a level called main menu. We don't have a main menu scene yet, so we are going to have to do that in a little bit. But first, let's include a copy of this main menu button on our pause screen. If we right click it, we can duplicate it, and then we can drag it into our pause screen, and then we can reposition it a little bit. To get the game over screen completely set up, we need to include it in our UI manager's pages list. We can drag it in like so. And then the game manager needs to know what index the game over page is in the pages list. So if we look in our game manager, we have this game over page index setting we will set to 1. And while we are here, let's go ahead and set the victory page index to 2 since we are going to add that next. Now let's add our level win screen and get that in the UI manager. And now with all of those set up, we should be able to hit play and lose the game and see the game over. If you lose all your lives and you don't see the game over screen here, make sure your player is tagged player and you have the game over screen set up with the UI manager and game manager. If we hit the main menu button on either the pause screen or the game over screen now, you will notice that you get an error in the console log complaining that there is no main menu in the build settings. And that's true. We haven't put a main menu in the build settings and we haven't even made that scene yet. So the next thing we need to do is make a new scene called main menu. Exactly as I'm spelling it here, because it is the same way it is spelled in the scripts which try to load it. Now if we go to File, then Build Settings, we can add in scenes we would like to load. We can do this by dragging in Level 1 and Main Menu. And let's put main menu at the top because what's at the top of this list is what gets loaded when a completed build of the game is launched. Now if we try one of those buttons that loads the main menu, we should be greeted with an empty scene. Let's change that by going into our main menu scene and bringing in the prefabs we need to make it work. Under Prefabs, UI, we have an entire main menu, so let's bring that into our scene. If we try it out, and you press New Game, it should bring you straight into our level 1. Now this prefab doesn't cover everything you want in your main menu scene, but it gives you a nice starting point for expansion. And in the interest of not repeating ourselves too much, we're leaving out a detailed setup tutorial discussion of most of this prefab. I do recommend you take the time to familiarize yourself with how it is set up. Things like the cursor changer might be fun for you to alter, and if you want to set up more menus in the game later, playing around with this one will give you a good idea of how to do that. But we are going to move on to the last thing we need to do to get the full game loop functioning at a minimum, and that is to set up the ability to win the game. So if we go back to our level 1, you'll notice that if I hit the play button, and you may have already noticed this warning before, we get this warning in the console log, which is produced by our game manager, telling us that we have the level set to be winnable, but we have the number of enemies set to defeat to be more than the number of enemies in the scene. This means that the level can't be completed. We can resolve this in a couple of ways. We could add more enemies, or we could reduce the number of enemies to defeat in the game manager, and we are going to compromise and do both things. So let's go to the game manager, and instead of 10 enemies to defeat, let's set this to be 3 enemies. And then we could create copies of this one enemy we have in the scene, but some variety would be nice, so instead I'm going to go into prefabs, enemies, and I could take from the chasers folder or the stationary shooters folder. You can grab 2 in any combination you want. I'm going to take a diagonal shooter and one of the chasers. Now that I have them dragged into my scene, I can hit play. And now when we win the game, we get the game win screen. Of course, we don't have a next level to go to yet, so this button doesn't do anything, but once you set up your own levels, you can load them through here. For now, let's go to our level win screen's next level button and set the level it loads to be our main menu. Now we can loop through our game. One last thing for us to do is to make a prefab out of this canvas, since it is our in-game canvas we want to keep using. Let's drag the event system under it as well, because we don't want to have to keep making a new one of those. Let's rename this in-game UI canvas, and then let's prefab it into our UI folder under the prefabs folder.